I secretly funded my sister's $685,000 wedding. Then she told me, "You're too embarrassing to be seen with us. Don't show up." So I made one call that ended her fairy tale ceremony before she could say I do. I, 34, have been carrying this family on my back since I was 19 years old. That's not bitterness talking. That's just the arithmetic of my life. When my father's construction business went under, it wasn't some dramatic collapse. It was slow. Like watching a man drown from 3 feet away. A bad contract here, a missed payment there, and then suddenly the house we grew up in had a lien on it, and my mother was crying quietly in the kitchen every night, thinking nobody could hear her. I could hear her. I always could. I dropped out of engineering school in my second year, took a night shift job at a logistics warehouse, then started teaching myself to code during the 8-hour windows between shifts when I had nothing else to do but stare at a ceiling and refuse to give up. 6 years later, I had built a small but profitable SaaS company that helped mid-sized manufacturers track inventory. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't the kind of thing that got written up in magazines, but it made real money, consistent, clean money, and I used it to dig my family out of the hole they were in. I paid off the lien. I cleared my father's business debts. I covered my mother's medical expenses when her knees gave out and she needed 2 surgeries back to back. I sent my younger sister through 4 years of a private university without her taking a single loan. I did all of this without making it a spectacle. I'm not built for gratitude ceremonies. I just did what needed to be done and moved on. She was 12 when everything fell apart. So she has softer memories of the hard years than I do. She grew up watching the problem get solved, not watching it start. I don't blame her for that. You can't blame someone for the childhood they had, but I think it made her careless about where the solutions came from. I was always just there, like a feature of the landscape, reliable, available, assumed. When she got engaged 2 years ago, I was genuinely happy for her. Her partner came from a well-off family, not flashy, but solidly comfortable, and the two of them seemed like a good match on paper. Stable, ambitious, ready for something real. I took them both to dinner. I gave a toast. I meant every word of it. Then the wedding planning started. I don't think either of them had a realistic sense of what they were about to spend. Or maybe they did, and they didn't care, because they had me. The venue alone was a historic estate about 40 minutes outside the city. The kind of place that had a waiting list and required a non-refundable deposit the size of a car. My sister sent me the brochure with a voice note attached, and in that voice note, she explained, casually and completely without irony, that she had already told the coordinator that funding wouldn't be a problem. She had just decided. I want to be honest here. Part of me considered saying no. There was a version of this where I drew a line and forced a different conversation. But this was my sister. The same little girl who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms. The same person I had watched grow up into a smart, capable woman. I wanted her to have the wedding she dreamed of. I genuinely did. So I wired the deposit, and then the next payment, and then the next one, over 18 months, across florists and caterers, and a 3-piece string quartet, and a custom couture gown, and a honeymoon package that made my accountant give me a long, silent look across his desk. I paid $685,000 toward my sister's wedding. The number sounds obscene written out like that. It was obscene. But I never flinched, and I never made her feel small about it, and I never once put it on a spreadsheet and slid it across a table to make a point. It was a gift. I treated it as a gift. Her future in-laws contributed a polite but modest amount, maybe $40,000 total, across a few specific things they had specifically asked to pay for. The rest was me. The whole architecture of this event, the thing that was about to fill 220 seats, with flowers and candlelight and a string quartet, that was built on my money. I found out what she really thought of me about 6 weeks before the wedding. She didn't tell me herself. I heard it secondhand from my cousin, who had been pulled into a planning call, and heard things he hadn't expected to hear. He was uncomfortable delivering me information. He sat across from me at a cafe and stirred his coffee for a long time before he finally told me that my sister had said in a conversation about the seating chart and the receiving line and who would stand where during photos. She had said that I was too embarrassing to be seen with them publicly. She had said she didn't want me in the family photos. She had said she was thinking of asking me not to come to the ceremony at all, or at most, to attend quietly and sit in the back, far away from the wedding party. I didn't react in the cafe. I thanked my cousin, finished my coffee, drove home, and sat in my kitchen for about 2 hours without moving. I have been called a lot of things in my life. I have been underestimated. I have been overlooked. I have worked in a warehouse in the middle of the night while my classmates were at parties, and I have negotiated contracts in t-shirts while men in suits tried to look past me, and none of that ever broke anything inside me. But this broke something. I want to be precise about what she meant by embarrassing. I am not a polished person. I don't come from money the way her future in-laws do. I don't wear the right watches or use the right vocabulary in the right rooms. I have calloused hands and I talk too directly, and I probably wouldn't blend in at a garden party at a historic estate. I knew that. I had always known that. But I had genuinely believed, that my sister saw past all of that. That the person who had been her safety net for 15 years meant something to her beyond what he could fund. I sat in my kitchen, and I thought about the deposit receipt I still had on my phone. I thought about every wire transfer, every confirmation email, every quiet conversation with vendors who thought they were talking to the groom's family. I thought about my mother, who didn't know any of this, who thought the wedding had been paid for through some combination of the couple's savings and the in-laws' generosity. And then I stopped thinking, and I started making decisions. I did not call my sister. I did not write her an email. I did not give her the opportunity to apologize or explain or reframe what she had said, because I knew from 19 years of experience with this family that the conversation would become about her feelings, and I didn't trust myself to stay calm through that, and more importantly, I didn't want to warn her. I called the estate. I spoke with the event coordinator. Composed woman, who had been the point of contact throughout the planning process. I explained that I was the primary account holder, which she confirmed. I explained that there had been a significant change in the financial arrangement, and that the remaining payments would not be going through. Then I asked the question I had been turning over for 2 hours: what happened to a booking when the primary funding agreement was withdrawn with a breach of contract notice attached to it? She was quiet for a moment. Then she walked me through it. There was a clause, one I had signed, one my lawyer had reviewed and flagged as standard, that tied the booking to a funding certification I had provided at the start of the arrangement. If that certification was formally revoked, the estate had the right to release the date. The non-refundable deposit would be forfeited to the estate. The remaining balance, which I had not yet paid, would no longer be owed. I told her to initiate the process. I want to be clear. I did not make this decision to punish my sister for hurting my feelings. I made it because she had made a choice about who I was to her family, and I had decided to make the same kind of choice she had. She had decided I was a wallet that could be kept at a distance. Something useful that didn't need to be seen. I decided that I agreed. I would be exactly that, useful at a distance, and then I would stop being useful. And in doing so, I would be seen, whether she wanted it or not. The call to the florist went differently. They were smaller, more flexible, and more sympathetic. They had dealt with complicated family situations before. When I explained that my funding arrangement had changed and that I would need them to confirm directly with the couple that the floral contract was now unfunded, they handled it with more grace than I probably deserved. The caterer was the hardest call because I liked them. The chef had done a tasting session that I had attended alone because my sister had sent me on her behalf, and he had been warm and genuinely talented. I told him the truth as cleanly as I could, that the funding for the event had been withdrawn and that he should contact the couple directly to discuss their options. He was professional about it. He didn't ask too many questions. 4 days later, 3 vendors had already reached out to her. She had spent those 4 days trying to understand what was happening before she was certain enough to call me. When she did call, her voice was at a register I hadn't heard from her since childhood. High and thin and scared. She asked me what I had done. I told her what I had done. She asked me why. I told her exactly what my cousin had told me, word for word, as accurately as I could reconstruct it. There was a long silence. Then she told me that she had been misunderstood, that the conversation had been taken out of context, that she had never meant it the way it sounded. I asked her one question. I asked her whether she had, at any point in the planning of this event, made a decision about where I would sit, or whether I would be in photographs based on how I might appear to her future in-laws. She didn't answer. The silence was the answer. I told her that I had withdrawn the funding, that the estate date was gone, that she and her partner needed to speak with all the vendors directly, and that I wished her well. I didn't hang up angrily. I didn't say anything else. I just ended the call. Update 1. It's been 3 weeks since the call. My mother found out. I had hoped to explain it to her myself, on my terms, but my sister got there first, which I had expected. My mother called me in a state I hadn't heard from her in years. Not angry, which would have been easier, but devastating. She didn't understand why I had done it. She kept saying that my sister was about to get married, that the wedding was in 5 weeks, that none of this could be undone. I told her she was right, that it couldn't be undone. I told her what my sister had said. My mother was quiet for a long time. Then she said she needed time to think. And she got off the phone. She called me back 2 days later. The conversation was different. She didn't defend what my sister had said. She didn't ask me to reverse anything. She said that she had spent those 2 days thinking about everything I had done for this family, quietly and without conditions, for 15 years. and that she was ashamed she hadn't said more about it while it was happening. That call was the hardest conversation I have had through all of this, but because it was honest in a way that nothing in my family usually is. My sister and her partner are scrambling. They found a smaller venue, a vineyard about an hour from the original location, that had a cancellation and was able to accommodate them on the same date. The wedding will happen. It will be smaller and simpler than what was planned, but it will happen. I know this because my cousin told me, and because I am not so petty that I wanted it to not happen at all. I have been asked by several people, my cousin, a mutual friend, one of the vendors, who somehow got my personal number, whether I plan to attend. I don't. Not out of continued anger. I think the anger burned itself out in those 2 hours sitting in my kitchen. I'm not going because I think it would be strange and uncomfortable for everyone, and because I believe that if I went, the day would become about me in a way that wouldn't be fair to anyone. It's her day. Even now it's her day. Update 2. The wedding happened last weekend. I spent the day doing nothing in particular. I went for a long drive in the morning, ate at a diner I'd never been to, and came home and worked on a product update for a few hours. It was quiet. I had expected it to feel worse than it did. She told me about it afterward in a voice that was careful and measured. The way she gets when she is trying to be fair to everyone at once. She said the vineyard was beautiful. She said my sister cried during the vows. She said the in-laws were gracious about the change in venue and didn't make it awkward, which I was glad to hear. She said my name was not mentioned in any toasts, which she said with a particular flatness that I understood was its own kind of statement. My sister has not contacted me since the phone call. I don't know if she will. I don't know what I would say if she did. There is a version of this story where we eventually have a real conversation, where something is rebuilt. I don't rule it out, but I also don't expect it. What I keep coming back to is not the money, which I had already made peace with losing the moment I wired it. What I keep coming back to is the fact that she thought she knew me well enough to make that decision, to calculate that I could be kept at a distance, that I would absorb the quiet insult the way I had absorbed everything else. And she was almost right. She knew me well. She just didn't account for the fact that what I had built over 15 years, I had also built the capacity to take away. I don't think I am the hero of this story. I'm not sure there is a hero. There is a family that has some accounting to do. A sister who made a calculation that turned out to be wrong. And a man who spent a long time being invisible, and finally, for one afternoon on a phone call, decided not to be. That's all this is. That's the whole of it.